Good afternoon. Let the record show that it is 6:02 p.m. We'll call to order the regular Durant Council meeting of May 14th, 2019. We ask that you please stand while Chief Hauser gives our invocation, and please remain standing while the police color guard lead us in the flag salute. Thank you.
Almighty God, we pray to you that in heaven up above, that you watch over our police officers, protect them with your love. Guide them, Lord, as they keep us safe both day and night. Lord, I ask that you hold them firmly in your care should danger come their way. Lord, I ask that you give them true strength and courage as they serve day in and day out. Lord, I thank you for a community that values our police officers and a community that supports our police department. Lord, I thank you for the men and women under my watch who lay their lives on the line each day so that others may live. Lord, I ask that you continue to protect them and their families each and every day. In your Son, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for us.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight, and the clerk will now call the roll.
Councilmember Morris,
Here.
Councilmember Shear,
Here.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Here.
Mayor Groby.
Here. We do have a quorum. It looks like we're all here. And our first order of business is going to be a presentation of a proclamation declaring May 12th through 18th, 2019 is National Police Week in the city of Durant. And in keeping with the tradition, I'd like to ask everyone to come down front while we present this proclamation. Thank you. I understand that the Honor Guard is going to accept this proclamation. Would you please come forward? Whereas the Congress and President of the United States in 1962 designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. Whereas National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. Whereas the City of Durant recognizes National Police Week 2019 to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty nationwide and in Bryan County while protecting our communities. And whereas the members of the Durant Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding lives, property rights, and freedoms of the citizens of Durant. Whereas the Police Department of the City of Durant is a skilled and professional law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital public service. Whereas the police officers' performances are a tribute to the fallen peace officers, their families, and to those enforcement officers across our nation that will stand vigilant in protecting our communities tonight and every night. Now, therefore, I, Odin Gruby, Mayor of the City of Durant, do hereby proclaim May 12th through 18th of 2019 as National Police Week in the City of Durant. I further call upon the citizens of Durant to join together in an appropriate memorial ceremony Thursday, May 16th, 2019, at Durant's Market Square at 6 p.m. to commemorate Bryan County Police peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives in the performance of duty. Would you like to say something?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
We appreciate it, though.
Okay.
We do have a lovely community, and I'm truly honored to be in a part of our nation that still supports law enforcement, whether it be the Sheriff's Department or a small police agency or our agency. This is my hometown, and I'm proud to serve here.
Our next order of business is our consent items, and our consent items is number 2 on our agenda. And if any council member wishes to pull a consent item out for discussion, they can do so. If not, can I hear a motion that we accept the consent items?
Motion to accept the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent items. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Gruby.
Aye. Item number 4 under information items. We are pleased tonight under item S. We're pleased to have our Honorable Senator Bullitt here tonight, and I think he may like to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for time, and I know that time is valuable. You have a long list of things to get done, and I've had a busy day myself, so I won't belabor it very much. You know, I've came here this evening to really congratulate you. We've had some hard-fought races, and I've stood exactly where you're standing right now. It sometimes can be rough. You sacrificed your time. You have sacrificed time away from your family, and it is my opinion that you have done a good job. And so I'm very thankful for the council that we have here. There are several things that I believe in. First off, I believe in Jesus Christ, that he is the Son of God. I believe in my town. I believe Durant is the best town in Oklahoma. I believe that the state of Oklahoma is the best state in the United States. I believe in the people around me, but be very clear this evening, I believe in you. I believe that this city council has a good task to undertake. Socrates once said that the secret to change is to invest all of your energy, not in destroying the old, but in building the new. That has stuck with me all of this time that I have been in this new role. You know, I've taught for 15 years before I was a senator. And that made a lot of sense to me, what Socrates said, because to me it made a lot of sense to look forward to what I can build, to what I can do. And so I'm here tonight to do a couple things. I wanted to talk to you guys and congratulate you, but here's the second thing I wanted to do. I want to walk beside you. In this, we have a task very similar to the one that I have. We have a responsibility of economics to build and grow, to build on what we need to do in the coming years. One of those is a task of leadership, and it's one that we've looked at for years now. I've paid close attention to how that works. There's a lot to do with leadership here, and every one of you sitting on this council have gotten here because you have a leadership skill. John C. Maxwell said that a leader is one who knows the way, shows the way, but then goes the way. John Wayne, my hero, by the way, said that tomorrow hopes that we are paying attention to the lessons from yesterday. So one thing that I came here today to do is that there's been something on my heart. As I've prayed about this and thought this through, there has been a thought on my mind that what I want to do is come alongside of you and walk with you, especially in the economic expansion of this city. My challenge to you, and it's not so much a challenge, it's not to call anybody out. I think that you're doing a great job. My challenge to you might be this. Before you leave this evening, make a list of the top 10 businesses you'd like to see here in Durant. Before you leave your seat where you are, make that list of the top 10 businesses that you would like to see come to Durant. I have already spoken with the governor and the lieutenant governor, and I will make the same pledge that they have, that if you can get a meeting with any of those 10 businesses, I will rearrange my schedule to be at that meeting. The governor and the lieutenant governor have both expressed that exact same sentiment, that if you can get a meeting with businesses who want to come to Durant, the governor, lieutenant governor, and your senator, let me rephrase that. They'll care about the lieutenant governor and the governor coming. They won't really care if the senator's there. But the governor and lieutenant governor have made it a pledge that they will be at that meeting. To me, that's a pretty big undertaking to say that we're behind economic growth. My second would be this. I would challenge this body, and you may already do it, but I would challenge this body to pray together once a week. Pray for your city, pray for your town, pray for the people in the town, pray for that economic growth. And I'll make the same exact challenge that I just made about the economic side, that I will do everything within my power to rearrange my schedule to come and pray with you. Those are the two things that I believe that if we do together, that we walk together in those two things, in those two facets, I believe our city will grow beyond measure. We'll never see the end of that kind of growth. So let me end with this. Ladies and gentlemen, I said it at the beginning and I say it now. I believe in my town. I believe in you as city councilmen and true good leaders of this town. I believe in you wholeheartedly. My goal in this and addressing you was to come to you and declare that I'm willing to do what it takes to walk right beside you throughout this whole process. And so I would like and request one more thing. Would you pray with me for just a moment? Our Heavenly Father, God, we come to you this evening in the name of Jesus. And Father, we come to you because we have united under a common idea that your people are good. And Father, we have come here this evening to unite under one idea, that we want to be together. And Father, I pray for these people, each and every one of them that are up here in this rostrum. Father, I pray for each one of them for blessing, for peace and security, but Father, I pray for joy. God, I pray that as we move together, Father, unite us behind one great cause. We love you tonight, Father. And we ask all of these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you so much, Senator Bullard. We'll now move to number 5, which is administration. First item, number A, is consider award of bid for grave digging services for 3B services, and I guess this first and second are all the same thing. Consider award of contract for grave digging services to 3B Grave Services, LLC, C-2019-23. Cindy, you going to speak on that?
I can answer any questions that anyone has on it. Does anyone have any questions? It was advertised in the Durant Democrat and on the city website. There was a mandatory pre-bid meeting. We had one company that showed up for that. It was required attendance in order to be able to bid, so we had one bidder who was also our current contractor for grave digging services, and he did submit a bid. The bid is the same pricing as what he is currently under, and this contract is also contains, I should say, a 2-year price lock. The prior contract contained a 1-year price lock. The only other difference with this contract is this is a 5-year contract as opposed to the prior contract, which was a 3-year contract. Does anyone have any questions?
Cindy, you mentioned a 5-year. Would we be approving that on an annual basis, or?
Well, and I might ask Mr. Markham to speak to this, but this is a little different in that we are receiving, we are not receiving funds from him. He's not receiving funds from us. The only time that we have any exchange of money is when we have a prepaid open close, and those funds go directly to him, and he is still accepting those funds as payment in full for a burial service, just as he did in the original contract. That continues on.
Yeah, Cindy, I think that's important to note. That's a difference than what you normally see on a bid. The services that he is providing, you're essentially approving him to provide those services in the cemetery, but the payment for his services actually come from third parties. So typically someone will pay the funeral home and the funeral home will pay him for his services. It's not something the city has an outlay of expenses to him. So
Move approval of the award of bid and the award of contract for the grave digging services to 3B Grave Services LLC, C-2019-23.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk record the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Number 5B, consideration to accept match contribution from Choctaw Nation in the amount of $673,913, supporting the EDA Public Works Federal Assistant Grant 08-01-05-284 for wastewater treatment plant improvement. Becca?
Hi, good evening. In April, the city received $1.5 million from the U.S. Economic Development Administration for the sludge press improvements at our wastewater treatment plant. And at the time of the application, Choctaw Nation committed $700,000 towards this project. And the $673,913 is the required match for the grant. And we need to accept that, or I'm asking you to accept that amount from Choctaw Nation.
Thank you, Becca. Is there any further discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I want to do a grateful, thankful motion to accept the $673,913 from the Great Choctaw Nation for the wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, could you call the roll, please, or take the vote?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Thank you. Number C, consideration to accept match contribution from Choctaw Nation in the amount of $26,087 supporting the EDA Public Works Federal Assistant Grant 08-01-05284 for wastewater treatment plant improvements. Becca again.
Yes, and this amount is the balance of the $700,000, and it will be utilized towards the project in whatever manner is needed throughout the project.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Any further discussion? Do I hear a motion to accept?
I make a motion that we accept the contribution from Choctaw Nation, in the amount of $26,087 supporting the EDA Public Works Federal Assistant Grant 08-01-05284 for wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk tally the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham, Mayor Groby.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Number D, consider, discuss, and approve ordinance 1880, amending the employee retirement system, defined contribution plan to the city of Durant, Oklahoma, providing retirement benefits for eligible employees of the city of Durant, Oklahoma, providing for definition of compensation, providing for repealer and severability, and declaring an emergency or take any other appropriate action. Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor Groby. This is somewhat of a house cleaning item. The city provides both a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. The defined contribution plan is actually fully funded by contributions from the employee. Currently, in our definition of wages, they're different, and so on a separation under the defined contribution, it provides for some of the separation of wages that goes towards the DC, and under our defined benefit plan, it doesn't. So under recommendation from our administrator, Municipal Retirement Fund, so we need to level those out. It'll help clean up our payroll process when we're finalizing those people out that are either retiring or separating from the city. It's really sort of stopping the employee from contributing to their retirement fund and then asking for it back if they so choose. So there are some elements related to this. Just leaves them have their own money, and if they so choose, then they can make contributions to retirement. But it's not a forced issue, so it levels it out between the defined benefit and the defined contribution plan. Hope I made that as least complicated as possible without getting too glassy-eyed for the remainder of your evening. But I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Anyone have any questions?
Move approval of ordinance 1880, sections 1 through 4.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and second. Cindy, will you?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Motion to approve section 5, the emergency clause.
Do we have a second? We have an emergency, motion to approve emergency clause. Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Thank you, Greg. Number E on our agenda, consider approval of resolution of the City of Durant requiring approval by the City Council of all departmental transfers exceeding certain amounts. Resolution 2019-15. Tom?
Mayor and council, this is a request by council. Typically, the council sees budget amendments as they are done throughout the year. The council statutorily passes the budget, and that's how the council sets their priorities for the year. As is normal, the budgets are amended for various reasons. There's additional revenue or less revenue, or some things come up. The council sees the vast majority of those and votes on them regardless of how significant they are. There's a certain category that is interdepartmental transfers that are not statutorily required that the council approve. But there was a request that those above $50,000 be approved by the council prior to the transfer occurring. So that's what this is.
Is there any discussion?
Question, City Attorney, aren't all the budget amendments contingent upon that vote and then they occur?
Not all budget amendments, and this may be something that Judy is more qualified, well, it is something that Judy's more qualified to address than I am. But most budget amendments, regardless of how the size, are seen by the council. This is really more of a interdepartmental transfer of funds that would catch these above $50,000. There may be still some routine ones that occur between departments for various reasons that are routine and probably would be cumbersome for the council if all of those had to come before the council. But this $50,000 amount, which is something the council could certainly change, was the number that was decided would be significant enough that the council see it before that transfer occur. So the short answer is yes, the vast majority of all budget amendments the council already sees. This was just catching that one category that is not statutorily mandated for the council to approve. Is that close, Judy? That's all I can hope for sometimes.
Sorry. I would like to explain one thing because it really gets confusing. Budget amendments is an umbrella, okay? And under this umbrella, per statute, you have supplements, which increase your budget. You have budget decreases. Those two have to come to you. You cannot give that right away to anybody. The transfers within a fund, you have the right to designate someone the authority to do that. You do that, or you did do that, when you adopt your budget resolution. This then will now put a cap on those transfers, but it's pretty rare for a transfer to be over $50,000. I can't even think of one. But supplements, if it's $1, it comes to you. If it's a decrease of $1, it comes to you by state statute. Okay? Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Is there any further discussion? Then we'll call for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2019-15 for the approval of the City of Durant, requiring approval by the City Council, excuse me, of all departmental transfers exceeding certain amounts.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk record the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion passes. Number F, consider approval of contract between the City of Durant and the Durant Industrial Authority.
Madam Mayor and Council, before you tonight is the request by the DIA to renew the 2018-19 contract. This contract was presented yesterday at the DIA meeting and was passed unanimously, 7-0. It's simply, at this time, when we got the contract signed by both parties, we had not hired a full-time director. We were in the process of doing so, and in the process of doing so, we've come up against another wall, which is going to be renewing the contract for 1920, which will start July 1. And this is simply a contract that will extend that to the 1920 year. Again, this will provide the council in this city to fund an economic development director position, whose responsibilities will serve as the executive director of the DIA, but will answer to the city manager on a day-to-day process.
Is there any discussion? Then, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the contract between the City of Durant and the Durant Industrial Authority.
Do we
I'll
have a
second
second? We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk, any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. The next part of our agenda is the public hearing, and we're now, it's number item 6, and we're now going into the public hearing part of our
Thank you,
meeting.
Mrs. Mayor. If it's your pleasure, I'd like to go ahead and give a brief staff report before we open this up for the public
Okay.
to speak. Basically, if we can have the slides in the staff report, you'll see a location map that basically shows we have a request to take this property with its current zoning of the R1 residential zone district to the R3 to allow for multifamily residential. Basically, in your staff report, it would be this aerial photograph, as you can see here towards the end. And I can come up, you're bringing it up. Okay, it's down a few more than that, guys. Okay, so as you can see, the hatched area in the aerial is the portion that's under request for the rezoning. On the next slide, that's a portion of the zoning map, which it will show you as you scroll down. The property right now is presently zoned to the front. You've got commercial zoning, but then you come back to the R3, so this would be a continuation of that R3 back onto the hatched area. The next slide would show you your future land use plan. Now, let me actually go to the blow up, which is the following slide. The area in the red circle is actually accidentally, we had changed that, but it must not have gotten caught in the report. The location that we're actually talking about, I'm going to step to the screen, would be essentially, right, if you see that subdivision with the looped road, it's right above that. So to the corner of the red square that we've drawn, if you bring your cursor down, over more to the right, up, just right from that subdivision, it's right there. So the corner of the red square would touch on that. I apologize for that being off. Your comprehensive plan, when you do your framework plan, what that looks at is it looks at the density that your road system, your sewer system, and everything would be able to support. So what your comprehensive plan shows there is a medium density residential, not a high density. I know that area has developed differently, But the intention of the comprehensive plan is for that not to be the case, for that to be a little lower density than what has happened out there. And it's basically because that's what your utilities and your roadway can support through there. So the recommendation for staff, because this isn't consistent with your comprehensive plan, was a recommendation of denial. This went before the Planning Commission, and as you can see, there was also a letter from a neighborhood contesting this project as well, and I'm sure they'll be here to speak. Several other representatives from neighborhoods in that area that were also concerned about that increase in density. Planning Commission heard all of that, went through the public process, and did make the recommendation for denial as well. So that's all I have, Mayor. So
Thank you.
I'll be here for questions if you have more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number A, under our public hearing, is the consideration ordinance number 1876, a rezoning for property located in the 3400 block of North First from R1 to R3. I don't know how many wish to speak on that, and is there a spokesman, or would anyone like to come forward and speak?
Thank you, Mayor Groby. You want us to go ahead and speak against this at this point? Is that?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
It's open for
All right.
debate or for your speaking. You
All
can say
right.
what you want.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor.
Mayor Groby, Vice Mayor Brittingham, Councilman, thank you
Just
for.
a minute.
Would you ask them to state their name and address?
I'm
for
sorry.
the
Would you
record?
please
Greg-
state your name and
Sure.
address?
Greg Clay. Thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon on behalf of the residents of Quail Ridge and Prestonwood, which surround the property in question before you. First of all, let me express my appreciation to you for your service to our community through your service on this council. After having served on the Board of Education for 22 years, I know the difficult decisions that you all are faced with, and I appreciate your listening and weighing what I have to say. I have to also say, as I was working on this, I really want to thank Cindy, because she was more than helpful in gathering information on this, and thank you so much for what you did. Also, just if I can tag on to what Senator Bullard said, what he didn't say is that there is a group of men and women who are already gathering, have already gathered twice, as a matter of fact, to pray for this group and on a regular basis. And so just know that he's more than just words, and that group was called together by Senator Bullard and is already in motion. As you may be familiar with the history of this property and the council's involvement, please bear with me as I try to briefly bring you up to speed. Over 10 years ago, Mr. Archie purchased the 15 acres adjacent to our two additions, as you've seen here. Bounded on three sides by single-family dwellings, he at the time requested commercial and multifamily zoning that exposed the adjacent homeowners to boarding houses, multifamily dwellings, dormitories, manufactured housing, bars and taverns, nightclubs, tattoo studios, dance halls, convenience stores, kennels, bus terminals, and hotels. As you might imagine, our residents objected to the planning commission and were prepared to do so for the city council. However, wanting to be good neighbors, we instead proposed at the council meeting that we get together and attempt to work out a compromise. Along with the mayor, the city manager, the city attorney, we met on numerous occasions to work with, not against, Mr. Archie. Our objection was then, and continues to be, not with Mr. Archie's proposal for an assisted living development, but with the specific zoning. In meeting with Mr. Archie and the then city fathers, we expressed these concerns to him and proposed on multiple occasions that he consider H1 zoning as more appropriate. While no zoning that we have in the city of Durant specifically addresses assisted living, that H1 zoning district appeared to be more accurately its intent and spirit, to follow that intent and spirit, including H1 or convalescent or nursing homes and sanatoriums. We believed that the definitions of these, especially sanatorium, are, if not identical, right in line with the definition of assisted living. While we strongly recommended that the H1 zoning would be more acceptable to the surrounding homeowners, Mr. Archie rejected that proposal and chose to apply for a much broader and less restrictive classification. As was expressed to him on numerous occasions, we had problems with this and continued to object in the strongest terms. So sadly, an impasse was reached. The council subsequently voted with the residents and denied Mr. Archie's request. Mr. Archie and his attorney then filed suit in district court. Judge Campbell then issued a ruling which gave us the current zoning with that buffer, this small area that's under request tonight, as a buffer of R1 single-family zoning between that broader R3 multifamily zoning and the homes in our additions. The council did not appeal, and such has it been for the last decade. Council members, Roy O. Disney, the brother of Walt, said decisions are easy when values are clear. So I'd like to address real briefly 3 values this afternoon: plans, people, and progress. First, plans. Mr. Archie has laid out plans for an assisted living facility. Even though dirt has been moved, Mr. Archie is under no obligation to you or to us to follow through on any of those plans. As future economic or family realities change, Mr. Archie's plans may change. What I can assure you is that for over a decade, the attitude of the residents to Mr. Archie's proposal has not changed. While our preference would have been for an entire 15 acres of single-family homes like ours, we have consistently and steadfastly continued to object, not to the proposed assisted living project, but to the R3 zoning. As well, God has not guaranteed any of us our next breath. I get reminded of that every time I set foot in these council chambers that were named after my father-in-law. Whenever, not if, but when, something happens to Mr. Archie or his family, and I'm not wishing it happens soon, but when it does, those of us that are left behind are stuck with the zoning and whatever the subsequent landowner chooses to build on that property. Even if the proposed assisted living project were started or even completed, it could be aborted or demolished, and anything within those zoning classifications could be built. Again, included in the R3 category are those things that I mentioned earlier. And as Mr. Archie himself reminded us at the meeting of the Planning Commission, he could construct Section 8 housing. So while Mr. Archie may not plan to change his plans, Proverbs tells us that out of the mouth come a man's plans, but the future is known only to God. Now, people, I think you'll agree that those who live in the adjacent additions are among the biggest supporters of our city. Just like you, some of us have devoted our lives to making this city better. The list of residents in those additions reads like a who's who in Durant civic involvement. But not only have these people invested their time and energy in this city, they've invested their money. Conservative estimates of the value of the 62 homes in the 2 additions borders on $20 million. It's not a plan, it's not a proposal, it's real, it's here, it's now. These are good folks. They're not contentious, they haven't taken the city to court. They're just good, down-to-earth folks and citizens who want to do their best to get along. But I can assure you that almost all the residents have a problem with the proposed zoning change. So plans, people, and finally progress. There could be no more progressive group of folks than the residents of these 2 additions. As I referenced earlier, we stand on the shoulders of a number of the people who live in these additions because of the contributions they've made to the progress in the city of Durant. But this, council members, is not progress. For us to put boarding houses or Section 8 or manufactured housing next to custom-built brick homes sends a clear message to potential homeowners, builders, and investors in our city. And that message says, stay away. Because when the value of our property goes down, it serves as a comp for other houses in the city, and the whole city suffers. Progress is when the value of all of our property appreciates, not depreciates. Decisions are easy when values are clear. I'm not a very smart man, but I serve an infinitely smart God, and the longer I live, the more I'm convinced that the answer to every issue, whether great or small, is found in His Word. One of the more famous stories in that Word involves the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon, to whom God granted a wise and discerning heart. Solomon was faced with a decision over a child disputed by two women, and as you know, he made that decision based on using his wise and discerning heart to judge the hearts of the two women. When Solomon ordered the baby cut in half, the baby's true mother valued others above self. The other woman cared for self above others. I would submit to you that in the case before you, the values are equally clear. And I believe that you have the wise and discerning hearts with enough information to judge the hearts, the values, and the motives of the two parties represented here. The values of the residents are not about profit. They're not about property. They're not about power. They're about hearth and home. They're about community. And council members, I believe they've demonstrated that by the lives that they've led, the sacrifices they've made to and for this community, that they are about others above self. Decisions are easy when values are clear. Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman, my mother told me that it's never wrong to do the right thing. And so on behalf of the residents of Quail Ridge and Prestonwood, we would respectfully request that you do the right thing, that you follow current staff recommendations, that you follow the unanimous recommendation of the current Planning Commission, and that you follow the decision of the District Court and the wisdom of that 2009 City Council, and that you deny this voting change, or this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clay. Are there any others who wish to speak either for or against? Are there any others who wish to speak? Are there any others who wish to speak? Is there any discussion with the council? We close this part of the public hearing. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I might just mention, and Dr. Clay alluded to it, full disclosure before I speak, I live in one of the adjacent neighborhoods, but that's not what I'm going to speak about. Jerry and I remember, I was on the council back when this first came up and this zoning matter occurred. There was a disagreement. The council denied the initial application. We got sued. As part of that lawsuit, which was technically termed an appeal of the city council's decision across the street at the district courthouse, Judge Campbell made a ruling, and in that ruling, he established this 150-foot R1 strip. This wasn't something that was arbitrary. This wasn't something that the council essentially did. This was something that the district judge created. So while the council has the authority tonight to do whatever it wishes to do, keep in mind that this 150-foot strip was established by the district judge upon appeal of this council's previous decision.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Is there any further discussion? Then do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we deny the rezoning for property located at 3400 block of North First from R1 to R3.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Morris?
I have heard more than one person sitting in this chamber stating, I think a guy or a gal should be able to do what they want with their land. That's a very good point, but I don't totally believe this line of thinking. Because when a group of people settle together for a community or a town or something like that, a set of governing rules must be made and adhered to for the overall good of the people. However, what I personally believe is not always relevant, because I'll remind us that all 5 of us sitting up here were elected to be the voice of our constituents. I've heard from many citizens making good arguments why this rezoning request should be denied, even as late as actually last few days. I think their wishes should be heard, in this case acted upon, so For this issue, I'm going with the constituents and the citizens, and I'm voting no. Sorry to take so long for a no. Oh, oh God.
The motion was to deny the proposal, so
You know, I made a big point about let's get that straight. And here I am, you know, I won't bore you with what I've done in my past. I've taught logic all my life, and here I am failing on it. So the motion is to deny it. I vote yes, as the citizens ask.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
As Councilmember Morris took a moment, I'll take a moment. Dr. Gregg, thank you, and all of those that are here this evening that we've heard from. I've probably, I'll say it again, in my 21 years now, I've not heard from folks as much as I have on this one, and all with respect. And I respectfully honor that and am appreciative of that. I think, as the city attorney has pointed out, as Councilmember Morris has pointed out as well, we discussed this over and over a few years ago. Greg will remember, you know, and Tom will recall because we were part of that. And then we have a district court ruling. And as we move forward in our comprehensive planning, we are considering new transitional zones, buffer zones, et cetera. And in saying that, we have a council's, a former council's wishes, this council's wishes, a judge's wishes and ruling. And I continue to support that decision years ago, and I today support this motion to deny that request. Be sure I vote right, Mike. My vote is yes to support the denial.
okay. Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby,
Aye. Motion carries. The second part of our public hearing, number B, consideration of ordinance number 1877, a rezoning of property located on Highway 70 East near Northeast 18th from R1 to R2. We'll now move to the public hearing part of that.
And once
Excuse me,
again,
staff report first.
thank you, Mayor. If it just kind of makes it a little easier to do a staff report first. Thank you, I appreciate that. So again, we have a location map for you. So that is East Highway 70. Just the other side to the north is outside of city limits. So the property to the east, if we go to the zoning map, that is a beauty salon, and that has been zoned commercial. If we go to the next, the comprehensive plan really shows this area as being the low density. So as a fact and finding, our staff is recommending denial on this because once again, it is not consistent with your comprehensive plan, with your future land use plan on this. There is a fourplex to the west of this that is a non-conforming use there. When this annexed into the city, that was there. That is non-conforming. So that is an issue that someday will come back up before you. But this is a low-density neighborhood, and the recommendation is to follow that, and that's the fact and finding that I'm giving you. In addition to that, the Planning Commission also recommended unanimously denial of this project. So sorry, a little longer than I wanted to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we will move into the public hearing part, and anyone who wishes to speak may do so. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Are there any questions from the council? Then we'll close this part of the public hearing and call for the motion.
I make a motion to deny ordinance 1877 for rezoning the property located at Highway 70 East near Northeast 18th from R1 to R2.
Do we
I'll
have a
second
second?
that.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk call the vote, please? Danny Sharon.
Councilmember Morris,
Watch me, Tom. Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now close that part of the public hearing. Next item on the agenda is C, consideration ordinance number 1878, rezoning for property located in the 100 block of South 13th from R2 to C2.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mayor. When we go to the location map, if you notice, the property, right next to it is the Carl's Jr. there on the corner of Main, and so it's that chunk behind there. There are some homes there now that will be removed. If you go to the zoning map right after that, you'll see that this is zoned, the R2 zoning. It's contiguous with the C2, I believe that's C2, yes, with it. So you've got the C2 adjacent to it. And if you look at the comprehensive plan, which is the very next slide, you'll see that it is also designated in your future land use plan as going to commercial in that area. So the recommendation from staff for your facts and findings is that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and it is adjacent to C2 zoning, so this would not be considered a spot zone. This is very appropriate to do. And also the Planning Commission's recommendation was unanimous for approval of this as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on public hearing item C? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Does any of the council members have any questions? Do we have a motion? Let's close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve ordinance number 1878A, rezoning for property located in the 100 block of South 13th from R2 to C2.
Do we have a second?
That would be section 1, I believe, if there's an emergency.
I think there is. I'm looking.
That would be for section 1, the motion's for motion is for section 1.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk record the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries.
Need a motion for section 2. Just
Do I have a motion for section
Just
2?
for the new council member's explanation, when there is an emergency on an ordinance, it has to have a separate vote, so there has to be a separate motion for the emergency clause.
Did we have a motion?
I don't think we did.
Yes,
Or
we
did
did have a
We
motion.
do have a
Okay.
motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Well, I called for, did somebody make the motion? Did I call for? Okay,
I will make that motion.
okay.
I need to
Do we
repeat
have a
it.
second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for section 2. Cindy, could you record the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Public hearing for number C is closed. We now go to section D, consideration to approve or deny request of an amendment to the final plat for the Red Bud Estates subdivision located along Commercial Lane.
And Ms. Mayor, I'll remind you too, at your last meeting, you did have a public hearing for this as well, so you may not receive any additional comments tonight. But I will yield the floor to the city attorney. I'm even quicker with that one.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, this is something that, for Mayor and Councilman Tomlinson, you've seen this several times now. For the new members that have been in attendance for the meetings, you probably recognize this. This is out for Red Bud Estates, where there was an initial plat. There were then subsequently homes built and sold, and did not necessarily fall within the previously platted lines. And the applicant is seeking to have the council approve an amended plat or a new plat to conform with how the properties were, how the houses were built. The issue that I've had all along was that the houses were purchased and now have several different homeowners with mortgages and utility easements and everything like that. And so up until this point, we've not had assurances by all of those interest holders that they would comply and you know, sort of keep the homeowners out of hot water if this were replatted. We had a meeting last week or the end of the week before, and I was hopeful that the applicant had come up with the requested information that I thought would adequately protect the homeowners, and that did not occur. I was given some paperwork immediately before the meeting started, and by immediately I mean seconds before the meeting started, some of which indicate that some progress has been made. I can't say that I'm still 100% comfortable that the homeowners are protected because this has gone on for so long, because the process to ensure that the homeowners are protected and that the city is protected from not taking action that would be considered a taking of the anything with regard to the homeowners. I am recommending not a tabling but a denial of the applicant's application here tonight. Certainly that's just a recommendation, and the city council can do as they please, but I'm recommending a denial. And if the applicant wants to take additional steps and come back with another application or go across the street to the courthouse to have a district judge resolve it, that's certainly, both of those are options, but that's my recommendation.
Okay. Would anybody like to speak on this?
I'm David Kelly. I represent the applicant. We have spent about 3 months trying to contact basically 3 mortgagees, and it's been a difficult task. But today, I finally made progress. The progress wasn't made by going through the natural channels. We had to email Jamie Dimon, who's the executive director and president of Chase Bank, before we ever got Chase Bank to really respond. But we got it today, and they said, we will agree. And I provided that to Mr. Markham. To me, that was the only requirement that the last council made, was to comply with the question is, have the mortgagees agreed? And there were 3, and they've all agreed. So we ask you to approve the replat. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So the mortgage companies are obviously, we're concerned about liability from them. What about the
Sorry, I
insurance?
can't quite hear you.
Okay, so we were concerned about the city incurring liability from the mortgage companies. Are we not equally concerned about the insurance companies that are insuring the properties, incurring some liability from them also?
You would have to ask Mr. Martin what his requirements were about that. Well, that's the first I've heard of that. It might be a-
I'm just curious if my house burned down and half of it was on someone else's property, I mean, what would happen?
Councilman Morris, ultimately, in my opinion, the only way that the city can absolutely ensure that the city does not incur any liability with regard to this is a judge's gavel and signature. That gets the city off the hook no matter what is done. If the city, even if the judge does something that this council doesn't agree with, or that the applicant doesn't agree with, the city's off the hook. There's always a chance that even when there's a purported agreement, and I will, to be fair, council did give me a piece of paper that says Chase Mortgage, and there's a signature on it. There's not a name on it. I can't read the signature. There's no letterhead. There's no seal. There's nothing that indicates, there's not even an address for Chase. This is a blank piece of paper with a signature on it. I'm not calling into question the legitimacy of it. I'm saying that I would have a hard time hanging my hat on this letter.
Well, I give you my word as a lawyer, Tom. I sent that myself. I prepared it myself at the request of Chase Bank because they didn't have time to do it themselves, and we had a deadline, and the deadline was tonight. And that was the only way to do it. I do have one.
I expressed
Did you
that I
see
did
this
not. I did not call into question the legitimacy of it, but I do. That's still my recommendation is a denial, because I'm not comfortable that all the boxes have been checked. They get checked across the street, and as I previously told the applicant and council, I will be their advocate across the street. I will be their ally because it needs to get done. It needs to get done for the property owners, but it needs to get done in a manner that protects everyone. And that's the only way that it protects everyone is with the judge's signature. So that's my recommendation.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this particular issue? Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
My name is Susan Loomis, and I'm a homeowner in the division of the street of Commercial Lane. And my question is how are we, I would like for us to be guaranteed that we're not going to be financially burdened with correcting these deeds and the legal documents that have to be filed. I don't know how we go about assuring us as homeowners that we're not financially going to be obligated to correct these mistakes. And for the record, this actually has been going on about 14 months. It was found as to be wrong March of last year. Everyone got involved basically probably the first of the year, and we've all sought legal counsel and those things, but we've not had anyone tell us it's going to be we don't have anything in writing, we don't have anything, and as a widow, and this is a lifetime investment for me, and so I have a lot on the line here, so I want some type of assurance that we're protected. And I appreciate your time and your advice to us. So I just need something that reassures us that if you do approve the plat, that whose job is it to get the new warranty deeds? And I'm not familiar with the correct terminology, but I want to know whose obligation is that. It should not be the homeowners.
Ma'am, I think that's an extremely legitimate concern. That's been my concern all along. That's been this council's concern, the previous council's concern, and that's why it hasn't been approved to this point, because that question hasn't been adequately answered. My position since the beginning has been that this is a private issue that should have a private resolution. This isn't necessarily the council's position to correct what was a private issue or private mistake, and I think it's fair to call it that. And so the bulk of my basis for a recommendation of denial all along from this council, or at least to require some issues, is so that the homeowners didn't incur either expense or trouble, because what council said earlier is correct. It is extremely difficult, time-consuming, frustrating to chase these mortgages up the chain when you're dealing with a large bank, because these mortgages get turned over, they get resold. And so my goal was to ensure two things. One, that the homeowners didn't incur that liability of either effort or expenses, and you shouldn't.
Yes, sir.
This wasn't something that you did or had any part of. And then second and primary for my position from here is to make sure that the city doesn't do anything for which it incurs some liability. So I think both of those things are accomplished by a denial here. Then you, as a homeowner, will probably have some duties across the street to make sure your voice is heard and make sure that those things are done, and a judge will have the authority to order the appropriate person to compensate you for expenses if that's what the judge decides to do. That's not within the authority of this body, though.
So if it does go across the street, we will be notified as homeowners that there's something going on?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone,
And while Mr. Bachman is coming up, I just want to be clear too, from previous considerations that, and particularly addressing this lady's very legitimate concerns, a denial or an approval of this amendment doesn't do a thing as far as correcting mortgage and property lines, et cetera, et cetera. That's still an issue. Our vote doesn't fix that at all. And I understand somewhat our city attorney's continued recommendation that this be resolved across the street at the county courthouse. And I'm sympathetic to the party in consideration here and their difficulties in reaching out to these mortgage companies. But those mortgage companies, if we'll recall, they sure weren't hard to find when you borrowed your money for that. Now, where are they now to help get this fixed? I'm not too happy about that, that they're not, someone's not standing by to help these folks. That's all I've got to say. Sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Bachman?
Charlie Bachman, I live on 3111 Little John Drive here in Durant. I just have a question. How was this allowed to happen, and how do we prevent this from happening again in the future? In other words, let's not put a Band-Aid on it. Let's fix the problem, and let's not have it reoccur. Who's responsible for checking lines and making sure that surveys are correct and so on and so forth? We need to protect the people, and I don't know if it's a city responsibility or at some point in time, because of road construction, and the city has to approve all those things, and all those other things will come off of the roads. I think the city is culpable to a point, but that's just, I just have questions, I don't have answers, just questions.
Let's not let that question go unanswered. The responsibility is for the person building the house. If you are building a house and you're pouring a slab, you have an obligation to make sure that that house is built within the property lines that you're supposed to be building it. The city does inspections. The city does inspections for the benefit of the city. They got to make sure fire codes are adhered to, building codes are adhered to. That's for the benefit of the citizens. That's not for the benefit of the builder. If you've got a professional builder that is building houses, he's got an obligation to put that house between the lines, not on the line, not over the line. that's the responsibility.
In answer to that, there's too many variables that you have to just say that. There's checks and balances as we go through this whole process. And for this to happen, there's multitudes of people that got let down. Now, we have said numerous times that the people on this replat, and we've all signed a replat where they know exactly where the lines were going to be set. They know the legal description where they're going to be set. I've offered to escrow money at the closing office to ensure that these people are not cost any money for them to get this done. And Mr. Adams with Bryan County Abstract, I've instructed him. That's my deal. Even though it's not all of it, we need to get this fixed and move on because I've got several dollars tied up in not only a property that I have listed for sale, but also a personal long-term investment. What we're talking about is we've got commitments from all three of the mortgage companies to tell us the corrections that needs to be made. And we've got it in writing, what we need to do. So basically, we can get this fixed in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks so our people can go ahead and continue and get their life put together, put their fences up, and get done what they need to do, or we can go play in the district court for 2 or 3 months dealing with this in addition to that. And as far as the city's responsibility, each one of these people are here and they've signed a hold harmless agreement. And that was done several months ago. So honestly, and every one of them's here, you can ask them a question. It's time to get it fixed. I have not asked for any money from anybody, and I have instructed it and be more than happy to escrow the money to take care of the title work until we can get it completed. Any questions?
Thank you.
That's the first time I've heard him say anything about escrow. I've not
Well,
heard that.
that just come up a few weeks ago because we was addressing Mr.
Okay.
Markham's concern, and I was trying to eliminate his concern to show him that we were put money in
Has
that.
anyone else heard that?
It
As
just come up
homeowners?
about a week ago.
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Are there any other comments?
I have one. We keep focusing on the 3 mortgage homes. I drove out there today. How many residents are there in that area right now? There's far more than 3 houses.
6 or 7, I thought.
Mr. Vice Mayor, it essentially is the east side of that
Right.
street. There's, Mr. Ball could probably
There
better address.
is actually 6 pieces of property that are involved. 3 properties has mortgage on them. That's on lot 9, 10, and 13. I own lot 12 and 14. And what I had to do is when we was doing this replat, if you'll look, we had a recap of how much property was lost per lot. I took them off of my lot where the majority of the lots were taken off of my property to keep people that were involved with this as whole as possible. And there has been some adjustments that we've agreed to after we get this finalized and get it done. You know, the 3 people that's involved that actually lost property, there's one person actually picked up 6/10 of an acre. So, you know, it's not like we're trying to take it personally. I've lost land. And I'm glad to do it because that's the right thing to do to make these things whole. And most of all, go ahead and get moved on and get this over with. Because I think that's what the common cause is. And as far as, you know, we can point blames, we can argue, but this is a plan that myself and Mr. Marty Cook, who was in the code enforcement back when this came up, developed this plan to where it's the most consistent, easy, legitimate follow-up plan that it is. And on the plat that was approved by each one of the people that was involved, we've had the title company to actually account for each square footage of that property on the plat. to make sure that the legal description, when it's corrected, can go back, and then instead of going to the courthouse and using meets and bounds, we use lot numbers, which is more consistent and more workable in the long range. So, you know, it's time. It's time to move on. Mr. Markham is gonna have a concern. I don't care if the sun comes up in the morning, it's 90 degrees. He's gonna be concerned about it not being 92. And that's his job, and I respect that. But also, I'm trying to respect these people and having, we fought this for a year. Any questions?
I don't have any, thank you. Are there any more who wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else? If not, this closes the public hearing section. And any discussion from the council members? Then we can call for the vote. Motion. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the request for the amendment of final plat to Redbud Estates subdivision located along Commercial Lane.
I second it.
We have a motion and we have a second. Cindy, would you record the vote, please?
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion denied. Motion approved, I'm sorry. Our next item is number 7. It's citizen comments on non-agenda items. And we have some names here. This first one looks like Ricky Armstrong. Yep. Ricky Armstrong. Would you please give your name and address? And Mr. Armstrong, you have 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
Are we gonna, and we got a little clock up here.
Good evening. My name is Ricky Armstrong, and I live at 1201 North 49th Avenue. Our house sits on the corner of 49th and Kimberly. I have come to ask for help. The section of the road above us on Kimberly is lower than the rest of the road, allowing the water to cross from the south side of the road to the north side, causing flooding. My neighbor to the west, Sheila Garner, has a driveway entering at this dip in the road. When we receive heavy rain, she also gets water in her large storage building. This picture, which I handed you, shows the marks where the water flows, and at times I've measured the water resulting in a flowing at the top of my foot or ankle deep. I'm requesting the city to raise the center of the road to equal what proceeds and follows the dip in the road, thus reducing the amount of water coming to our side. We have lived at this address for 21 years, and we have been flooded numerous times, causing us to have the flooring removed and replaced, as well as baseboards and drywall. This is not a permanent cure, but I believe this will reduce the amount of water flowing into our garage. By stopping some of this water, it buys a little time, allowing the excess to drain its normal path and not doubling the amount of water coming across, possibly keeping the flooding in it as little or no occurrence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any of the council
I
wish?
need to gather my pictures back up there.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Our next speaker is Jack, and Jack, I can never pronounce your last name, I'm sorry.
I'm Jack Shadle. I live at 1204 Colt Drive in Durant, and I don't know how the council wants to handle. I have 3 topics that I indicated on. Do I have 4 minutes for all 3, or to 4 minutes total?
5.
I'll make it.
I
I'll
guess 5
I'll summarize
4
what
or
I
5,
have.
yeah.
My first concern is a storm warning system. I've contacted emergency management, been advised that the city has 19 storm warning sirens, and as to date, 5 do not work. I know that the storm warning siren at the community church on on University has not worked since December, because that's when I first started contacting emergency management to find out what the problem is. I visited with the assistant director. He invited me out to see their facility and to talk about it. And he explained to me that it had been trying to find someone that serviced sirens, and that he finally had found someone in Edmond that did that. I called back later and asked what kind of progress was being made, and he said that that company was supposed to be in Durant the following Friday of that week. I followed up a couple of weeks later, and he advised me that the estimate to repair the sirens was in excess of $20,000, that the city manager had an approval authority of $15,000. Thus, the city council would have to approve the expenditure, but it also required a competitive bid, and he was in the process of getting that done. I would suggest that based on the weather-related storm damage of recent, the 2 storm deaths in Bryan County, and other possible liabilities, that this is a public safety issue and needs to be addressed immediately. My second item is street lights, not signals, just street lights. I went through a process of communicating with the city, and was told that they'd get a hold of OG&E, that they were responsible for the street lights. I followed up and was told that OG&E had told the city street department manager, James Young, that they were in the process of installing LED street lights in Durant, and that problem would be addressed. My initial finding was the street light at the intersection of 49th Street and Highway 70. It's been out for quite some time. After driving up and down the length of Main Street and several other streets in town, I find numerous lights that are not working. I would suggest that the police department night shift determine that what lights are not working and report the same. My third thing is an issue that everyone loves, I guess, drainage issues. I have left with my council ward member and the mayor some pictures also. I live at 1204 Colt Drive in Remington Hills, and my concern is why we have approved a plat for a building where we drain almost a quarter section to one cul-de-sac with a 4-foot opening for the water to go out, which then must run uphill. How can that happen as far as in the approval process of plats in the future? That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
And I would also add that, how can I help with these issues or any other issues that the city has? Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This next person is Robert Romo. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Close enough.
Okay, thank you.
And it kind of ties in with yours, my name's Robert Romo. I live at 110 Cornell Drive, and I'm wanting to see if y'all can find a way to help keep some of the flooding out. Since Remington's been built, my house is flooded 5 times. This last rain we had, it was about 3 inches deep through my house, and I waited out in the street and put a yardstick down. It was 33 inches deep right there. I went down to the corner, and I feel sorry for those people because it was 42 inches deep on the corner. In the past, when I come to the city council asking for help, they said, well, we've got a 3-foot drainage ditch. My question was, have you seen it lately? It was about 2 inches deep. They came out, they looked, the next day they dug it out. Then they told me, it wasn't the city council that told me, they told me that they were going to put a 24-inch drain pipe in because they put 2 little gutters there on the corner of Cornell and University. And they did that, but the people installing it put a 12-inch pipe in. I think that extra 12 inches would haul a lot of rain out because, like I said, once Remington got built, we got all that cement there and the houses, and where does it go? It goes downhill. And who's downhill? Me. I know the city's got a lot of things, but I do get tired of replacing flooring. I own my home. I don't plan on living. I'm not from Durant, but I've lived most of my life here, and I plan on staying till I kick the bucket. So anything y'all could do to help would be appreciated. Matter of fact, even my neighbor had his jet ski out riding it up and down the street the week before last. That tell you how deep it was.
I may be out of order, council, but in a 15-minute period of time, the last big rain, I got 1.77 inches of rain. And I know that design is not going to be designed to handle that. That's certainly under 3.5 inches in an hour.
Thank you very much. The next one we have on here to speak is Charlie Bachman. Last but not least.
This is a quick proposal. One of the problems we've had in the city, and I've heard numerous complaints and no solutions really, is sidewalks. My recommendation is we make a change to the building code that would require any new home being built put in sidewalks. It'd be a step forward in the future, and it'd be a simple thing to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. The next item on our agenda is number 8, executive session, and if the council is approving of this, I think that we will recess out of our regular council meeting and go to our airport authority. Does anybody have a problem with that? Do I have a motion that, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jerry, do we have a motion?
Motion to recess.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Morris?
Aye.
Councilmember Shear?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham?
Aye.
Mayor Groby?
Aye. Let the record show that it looks like 7:35. I've got a little blur on the clock. 7:35, and we are now in, the airport authority is now in session. I call it to order, and if you would please call the roll.
Okay. Trustee Morris?
Here.
Trustee Shear?
Here.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Here.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Here.
Chairman Groby?
Here. First order of business is consent item. There's only one thing, so I'm assuming that we can approve that and go on. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Secretary Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Trustee
Not call
Morris?
the roll.
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. We have an information item that we're going to skip over unless someone has a question. The next item is number 5 under administration. Number A, consider approval of the fixed-based operator FBO minimum standards document and begin implementation. Marty?
Madam Mayor, it's good to see you all. I haven't been up here tonight, so you shouldn't be tired of me yet. It's always good. Actually, this one was a surprise to me. I didn't actually put this on the agenda, and then I heard it was a request from the mayor to come on the agenda. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. This is
a fixed-based operator minimum standards document trying to guideline a way to track these businesses with no fees exchanged. It wouldn't cost any money to them to sign up and let us know what they do at the airport and what their function is. Also, it includes specialized aviation service operations. But in doing this, the intent was to delete the contract or cancel the contract that we currently have with DW Aviation as a management service for our airport, and then to hire employees that would work for the city to manage the airport. So it's a whole big can of worms, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Is there any discussion, any questions?
Marty, this is what we've considered. I think this is our third.
This is the third time. Going back a couple times, if you'll remember, bond counsel stood beside us one night and agreed that this was an appropriate action for the findings that they had in their bond that built the terminal building, in keeping in compliance with that as well. So
No changes.
Mr. Markham's seen the documents as well and has approved.
Thank you, Marty. Any more discussion? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the fixed base operator minimum standards document and begin implementation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Could the secretary record the vote, please?
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Marty. I
I'm
guess
still-
you continue
I'm still here.
standing. Item B, consider termination of ground lease agreement C-2019-06 with First United Bank.
So a few months ago, you also remember we did a ground lease with First United Bank. They were going to take a piece of our property and build their corporate hangar on it. As it turns out, after they spent some money and some time looking at engineering, the soil conditions for what it would have taken to construct the hangar they wanted to construct, the price had increased quite a bit because of the soil they were going to have to work around. So they have come to us, and there's a letter in here as a request from First United Bank on requesting that we terminate the contract and refund a prorated amount of the money back to them. I think in being good neighbors, they didn't utilize the property. I think this is a fair request, and we will reutilize the property as we see fit at a later time.
Marty, I'd like to ask one question. Does this mean that the property out there, the land, is going to have extensive things done to it to be able
I mean,
to?
I got to say yes and no, because they were building also a very big hangar with a lot of cement on the ground. The way we had originally ideated to construct that area was with smaller hangars, and they would face the south. And so without an engineer present and without somebody looking at that, I don't feel like it would take as much work to do a smaller hangar that would house a smaller plane as opposed to what they were entailing.
Okay.
We'll
Are
have
they-
to have
are they-
engineer help us make that decision later.
Is there still a consideration for a hangar? I know there's a very large hangar out there that belongs to the tribe, and I'm just curious. This was a real good opportunity.
Sure. No,
for the
and
airport.
to be honest, we continually get contact from other people who are looking to ground lease places to build hangars. We're looking on the north end with some right now and trying to work on some other property. I'm not sure First United has another solution yet, but they know that this won't work for their needs. And so they're really just trying to get out of this at the moment, and then we will continue to be in discussions with them as to help fulfill their needs.
And
Did-
count, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did the Choctaws run into the same problem?
It's been so long, I don't remember. Obviously, they went ahead and built, but maybe they did have to spend more than we thought. I couldn't tell you at this time. It's been so long ago.
Has there,
I know that the South Apron area, when we poured that a couple years ago, we went through some warranty problems with it because there is some expansive soil down there, and it ended up cracking that apron area, and we had to go back with warranty and replace some of it. So it doesn't surprise me that there might be some soil issues. But again, it really depends on the design of the hangar and pavement you're going to build. Because, I mean, engineering can change drastically based on the expected weight, the expected load, the expected footprint of your structure.
And to answer your question, Councilmember Tomlinson, the word's already out on the street that this is going to be up for a vote tonight, and we've already, I think Marty had alluded to, we've already had people contacting us.
I've got
about
people
that-
approaching me about this piece of property already.
About this piece of property with just
So-
a smaller weight-bearing aircraft, so.
Move that we approve the termination of the ground lease agreement C-2019-06.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. Motion carries.
Yeah.
All right, next item on our agenda, and Marty's still here. Number C, consider allowing Hangar 10 Aviation LLC to begin fixed-based operations, FBO, out of their lease facility, which would include but not be limited to the installation of storage for the jet fuel and 100 LL aviation fuels by Hangar 10 Aviation LLC and the retail sale of those fuels subject to the fair and equal fuel flowage fee established for all fuel storage tank owners as set by the Airport Authority and to be located in Durant Regional Airport, Baker Field.
All right, so this one, you as a council didn't hear last month, but the council did hear last month. This one was tabled. I felt there were some other considerations people were considering. Hangar 10 Aviation is currently in the audience, and if you would like to hear from them about their plans, we'd be more happy to share the floor with them. I want to be clear that this does include the sale of fuel. Not that it can't be amended, but in the minimum FBO standards we set earlier, we distinctly said that we wouldn't allow people to do that, right? So again, not that it can't be amended, you surely have that power. I just want you to understand where we're at, okay? You want to come?
Marty, I want to be clear too, when you say amended, you're talking about what we voted on already.
What you voted on as the first item tonight in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your rules and
There's
regulations.
nothing to amend here yet.
No. Your rules and regulations also state, and you passed those some months ago, that fuel sales would be ours. I mean, that's always been ours, and there's no reason we believed at that time that that would change. So,
Okay.
Mrs. Mayor, honorable council members, I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. When this was tabled last month, we expected a communication from the city manager or Mr. Cook, and we have not received any communication. So I don't know what further I can add that we didn't already discuss last month, but I'd be happy to answer questions if I can.
Does anybody have any questions?
I guess I want to be clear on the fuel cell portion of this. When you're talking about amending, you're talking about amending the minimum standards that we just did, or amending
yeah, I mean,
this?
you can amend any document you create, right? So, right now, your rules say that nobody will sell fuel. The fuel comes from our tanks. We have the only fuel in the airport that we sell to the public. And so, and he's asking to put another fuel tank on your airport that he would own, put fuel in and sell to the public as a competitor. And so, yes, if you say yes to this, then we would have to look at amending the other documents next meeting or something. I mean, that's.
And to be fair, that would be with a fee paid to the city, that the city had to do nothing to receive other than allow us, the opportunity to do business.
But if we amend that, we go back to out of compliance.
I don't want to get in the weeds about the amendment. That's really not. I mean, I'm just.
But that's what it is.
You're right.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think this has anything to do with compliance. We're not asking for a single thing from the city. None of your facilities, absolutely nothing. We're just asking for the right to do business.
And I understand that, Mr. Bray, and I appreciate that. But I think with what was voted on earlier, you can probably do all of this with the exception of fuel sales.
Sure. That's exactly the case. And I mean, he's not taking anything from us as far as a product, but he is taking our profit. If we allow somebody else to sell fuel, every drop he sells, we don't. And so that's that exclusive right that we've talked about, that we have the right to maintain.
But if we vote yes for Mr. Bray, then we have to go back and modify the other one? Because this says that he can sell fuel here.
That's exactly my point, and the other
Right.
one says that he
He
can't.
cannot.
So,
Okay, got it.
And your rules document that was passed in December actually says that people can sell fuel with the airport authority's approval, so.
you've got to have your permission. And that's
So
what it is.
you've got 3 documents in front of you, 2 of which you've already approved that already contradict each other.
Now, well,
They do. I mean, Marty, it said, the rules document says the fuel can be sold with the authorities, or anybody can sell fuel
authority can
with the
give you
authority's
permission to
approval.
do anything.
Correct.
So it
So,
doesn't
and your other
contradict-
document just says that nobody can. So you got 2 documents that you've already passed that already contradict each other.
Well, hopefully we can get this straight tonight.
Well,
I don't think it's gonna happen tonight.
I don't think we want to contradict rules or contradict, that may not be the right word, but, David, I stay in the definition of compliance. And, you know, I can see a vote on this with the exception, or amended to remove the full-service sale of aviation fuel. You may not want to move forward with that, but I think for this, you're right, this authority can vote on that, but we just voted to go into compliance, and I'm not interested in going back and voting to go out of compliance.
Well, and Mr. Councilmember, with all due respect, the route that you guys chose to go into compliance wasn't your only choice. This authority was in compliance for the first several years after construction of the terminal building. They only went out of compliance by your own choice when you went with your latest contract with DW Aviation. So you could have done a variety of other things besides staff the airport with city employees that would have kept you in compliance. You could have reverted back to a previous version of a contract that, you know, with DW Aviation, for example, you would have still stayed in compliance. That may not be something that was brought to your attention, but that is a fact. Correct?
it is fact, and we have discussed all the options with most of the council.
And I would also, the other question I would ask is, was this last, the previous item you just passed, or any of those items, has any of it been brought to the Airport Advisory Board for their input? They just met last week, so would have been a great time to take it.
Is it fair to say that there's really not any discussion if the fuel sales are not a part of the services?
You're absolutely right.
Fuel sales are,
Without the fuel sales, he doesn't even need the permission for the rest of it.
right, and fuel sales are a cornerstone of any FBO operation, so without the fuel sales, you don't have an FBO operation.
Including our own.
Is someone else wanting to speak? Come up here, Jim.
No, this is, yeah, this is not a public hearing.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. The bottom line, I guess what you're saying, Marty, is since we voted for the first one to not allow the fuel to be sold through the minimum standards, if we vote yes on his request, we're contradicting the two.
You are, and so I'd like to explain this very simply as a business decision and forget all the other services, but we all know it's a fuel decision. And we make $200,000 a year right now on fuel, and even if he's gonna pay me a flowage fee and sell fuel on his own, we're still gonna not make as much money as we used to, right?
Right.
We are set for, with the expansion of the airport, with the expansion of these ground leases, we may grow in the next few years. And I bet he recognizes that too, as an opportunity to do business. And I can see the fuel sales growing as well, to maybe help us cover some more hangar maintenance and some more ground maintenance and some new, hangar doors that we need out there in some places. That's money that goes right back into the airport and is used to maintain the rest of the facility. And if we give away even a penny of it, that's a penny I can't spend at the airport. So as a business decision, I think we try to hold on to one of our only two profit generators.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? David, do you have anything else you want to say?
Nothing more than I've already said,
Okay.
Ms. Mayor. We just, we're asking for the right to do business, so.
Okay, okay. All right, Mr. Bray, thank you. Are we ready? Is there any discussion among us? Can we call for the vote? Or a motion? Do we have a motion?
Again, for me, there's not issues with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 6 services requested to do. I don't know that I have an issue with aircraft supplies and parking and ramp services, and aircraft lavatory services, ground power services, aircraft rental and flight. I don't have any issues with those, I don't think. The one that is an issue today, which may not be an issue at a later time, but is the sale of aviation fuel. It's again it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's a business consideration, and it's a compliance consideration for us at this moment. If Mr. Bray and Hangar 10 Aviation is open to a motion to permit. Nope. What am I talking for? But how do they not sell fuel then?
I don't necessarily agree with this request as stated because of the fuel sales, which we obviously want to keep. That would mean, in my opinion, that we would deny this request, but Hangar 10 would be certainly welcome to come along with another request with all of these things without the fuel in it. It's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Does that need to be split? Because if you deny the request officially, they couldn't do any of the rest of it either, and that's not accurate.
That would just be in this motion, Marty. I mean, he could come back next month with everything in here, except the fuel.
A motion could be, if there is, Tom's maybe advising a motion is not even necessary, but the restriction of the fuel sales somehow needs to be noted. If indeed the other 5 services or other services are going to be provided.
Yeah, with all due respect, we don't need permission to provide any of the other services. The fuel sales is the only thing we need permission to provide. Having said that, the fuel sales is what supplements the other services. You can't provide the other services without having the revenue generated from the fuel sales. So, you guys have made a decision, which I respect, to staff the airport on your own. I just hope you know the ball of words you've opened up when it comes to what's actually required to staff an airport. All the services that we mentioned are services that are provided by other airports of this size that are being demanded at this airport by tenants that the city's currently not providing. So you're gonna have to step up and start providing things, which is gonna cost you more than I think you're budgeting. So that's all I got to say.
The bottom line is if you vote for the first part, we voted for the minimum standards.
Would it be appropriate to not take action? Tom, would it be appropriate to not take action?
Certainly, that's certainly within the council's.
Because they don't need permission for the rest of it, and that doesn't give them the right to sell fuel.
Marty, if we deny this, we're denying the package, not 5 out of 6 or 2 out of 3.
The package can be adjusted.
And Hangar 10 is not in agreement with an adjusted package. It's all or nothing as far as we're concerned. So.
Then the motion would be to deny.
Or if further negotiations are potentially a consideration, no action.
And we would be open to further negotiations with your city staff. We expected that over the last month and didn't receive any communication, so.
But if that further negotiation is going to be hinged on fuel cells, and we're still not going to give up fuel cells, what is the point of tabling this?
And we would also welcome an opportunity or proposal to address your airport advisory board and let you guys have some input from them. I think they should have had the input on the first thing you voted on as well, but we'd be happy to address your airport advisory board.
Do we hear a motion?
Madam Mayor, if there's no motion, it's just no action. So,
Okay. Is there no motion?
I have a question, Tom. Is there anything we can do to preserve the privatization of our selling fuel with what we have here on our agenda?
the council could approve the request and accept out the retail sale of aviation fuel by Hangar 10, which would essentially be approving the other requested services. But Mr. Bray has already indicated that it's all or nothing, and that would be up to Mr. Bray if he chose to accept an amended request. But the short answer is yes, the council could approve the request with the exception of the retail sale of aviation fuel and reserve that for the city or the airport authority. So that could be done, and that would continue to allow Hangar 10 Aviation to provide those other services if they so chose.
Marty, I agree that we need to expand services at the airport. Is the city looking at that?
This year-long journey we've been on, I have gathered quotes for a lav cart and a GPU unit and some other products that we can use at our airport. I have not been willing to invest your hard-earned money in those things yet until we come to some conclusion on whether we're going to be maintaining that fuel service or not. And that's been this year-long process. We have identified some money set aside to upgrade and keep the fuel service operable, and some of these other services that he's talking about providing, we are going to entertain providing them as well. Now, I don't know that it would be all of them, and I didn't read the full list necessarily, but I absolutely, me and David have talked about these services before. He provided a lot of the details and the data where I bought the last tug that we bought, because we try to cooperate on this. It's really not anything that I haven't wanted to move forward on. It's the fact that I don't want to waste money if we were going to then give away the fuel sales or the FBO in a way that we wouldn't need to spend our own money. So, yeah, now that we're going to keep that, it would appear, you would see on the budgets where the money would be appropriated for that.
So
I would think you said we were making $200,000 a year on fuel sales.
Mhm.
It's probably not, if you split that, it's not gonna be good for either person. I mean, I think it needs to be all or nothing.
Yeah, competition's gonna be tough either way. I mean, because you're right, it's not big enough to handle 3 or 4 people selling fuel, and I think David will agree with that. But
I would agree with that. I think you do have sufficient business, and there is the potential for sufficient business in the future to handle 2 people selling fuel. You mentioned the investment equipment. Hangar 10 has already made that investment. We have the equipment on site already, as a matter of fact. We can, to us, it's not that big a deal to provide the services. But it's more, our investment is more than just equipment. If you read through the proposal, our investment is expanded operating hours. It's increased staffing. It's a variety of things that, you say the city is currently making $200,000 a year. It's a variety of things the city is not doing now. So if the city wants to try and match our proposal and provide the services that we've said we're going to provide, your $200,000 profit you say you have now isn't going to be there. I don't know any government function or any function that is provided by the government that can't be more efficiently done by the private sector.
Any more discussion?
I generally agree with that.
Yeah, and we're by no means, trying to say the city of Durant doesn't need to be selling fuel. If you want to sell fuel, you're providing an essential service. You're welcome to do so. If you want to expand your operating hours to match ours, you're welcome to do so. We're not trying to put anybody out of business. We're not trying to do anything. We're simply asking for the right to do business. So, as The senator spoke earlier. It's all about economic advancement and economic growth within the city, and that's what we're here seeking to do, is provide some of that.
Thank you, David. Any comments? Could we have a motion?
At this time, I feel like we need more. I don't think we want to give up our fuel cells, but I think we need more planning. And before we, I mean, there are some changes that probably need to be made, but I don't think we've looked at them.
Well, as Marty had alluded to earlier, the reason why we haven't implemented any of those changes is because the last year we've been in this process. So I've not authorized them to move forward with purchasing all those things when we might be, contracting it out or however it was going to be. Again, I would also like to say that this isn't something that we just willy-nilly thought about. I mean, we actually did go out for RFPs, and we were in the process, and that's when it was discovered we were not within compliance of our bond documents, and moved forward. And last 4 or 5 months spent a lot of time, a lot of money with our bond attorneys and coming into compliance. And one of the things was not giving up the fuel cells as part of it as well. So, I mean, there was a lot going into this decision than just, wanting the $200,000 of fuel cells. And we have a very short window to get back into compliance with our bond, the loan that was taken out to build the terminal building. We still have 10 more years left on that.
7?
10.
10.
And Mr. Councilmember, if you guys wanted to, make a motion to table this and, include with some, further discussion with the Airport Advisory Board, I would welcome all of y'all to come to the, advisory board meeting. I know Mr. Shear is a member of it. I think this is something you could really take some advice from the professionals that you've charged with advising you on how to run your airport. It's something that should really be consulted with them.
It didn't die for
If I might make a suggestion, if you want this to come back in its same form, you can table it. If you want to take no action, then it can be put back on the agenda in this form or in any other form at some future time. So I might advise taking no action. It doesn't prohibit the council from putting it back on the agenda next month, but it can come back in a different form if need be. If you table it, it essentially comes back in the same form.
Okay. Do I hear a motion that we take no action at this?
Madam, you don't need a motion for that. You can just announce that we take no action if that's the pleasure.
Is that okay with everyone?
I have one question. If we take no action, does it come back in its existing form?
We can change it.
Yeah, it can come back in any form. It can come back in exactly this same form or in an amended form pursuant to the pleasure of the mayor and staff.
And with all due respect, it was a 4-month fight to get this before the agenda, before the council in its current, in any form at all. So we, from a Hangar 10 standpoint, we would prefer a table as opposed to a no action, just so we are guaranteed to remain on the agenda. I mean, it's, you've got to go through the city manager to get on the agenda, and that hasn't always been easy, so.
But if we table it,
Last time we
we're gonna
tabled
bring it, it has to be brought back the exact same way.
That's exactly what happened.
And we're gonna be right back 30 days from here in the same situation. So we either,
But I think
no
that-
action or.
no action would allow it to come back in a different
Right.
form. Tabling it, I think, as you're saying and as council has said, it had to come back like this.
That's correct.
Well, I mean, I think that tells us what we need to do.
Now, it could be amended at that time if there were some amendments that came out. It could be amended in the meeting. And I understand Mr. Bray's concern about getting it back on the agenda, but taking no action would allow those amendments to take place and be presented at the meeting in its amended form, if that's the pleasure of the council or based on negotiations with Hangar 10. But the council certainly could table it and it come back in its current form. And if there were amendments to be made, they could be made on the fly at the meeting.
And for the new council members that may not have been privy to the December meeting, that what brought this all into focus, or even brought this to this item on the agenda today, was the approval of an airport rules document you guys passed in December, which gave the avenue to allow other people to start selling fuel. So the council and the airport authority in December of 2018 passed a rules document that has a clause that allows other people to sell fuel with approval of the authority. So as that document was passed, we began petitioning the city manager to address you guys, and we didn't manage to do it until last month. So.
And there's a lot of good reasons behind that.
Well, I'm
There was
sure
not-
there- I'm
there was
sure-
no-
I'm sure
there was
there
no
are.
intention, Mr. Bray, to block you from coming to this body. The process, and you are well aware of it, we were having several meetings with our bond attorney and our bond counsel to decide what we needed to do. And to have somebody come in and do this, knowing what we know now, would not have been a good decision, so.
Mr. Bray, if I come to the airport authority meeting, which I did a couple of weeks ago, am I allowed to ask questions, or do I just have to sit there? And
Oh, no,
listen?
you're allowed to ask questions. There's a public comment section for every meeting, just like there is here. So you're allowed to ask.
Can I join in the conversation, or do I have to wait and ask?
I can't speak. I'm not the chairman of that authority. Mr. Craig, wherever he went, is here. Dr. Craig. I would welcome your input. I would love to see every single one of you there. I assume Dr. Craig would allow you to speak.
That's an advisory board, not an authority.
Yes, it's
It's an advisory board, so, I mean, we would love to have all of your input, so I don't have a problem with it. Dr. Craig's the one that runs the meetings, so. So we would love to see, airport authority participation, at those meetings. It's been lacking in the last several years, and we look forward to, to having that. Changing hats speaking as an advisory board member, but.
What's the council's pleasure?
What happens if we take a vote on this and for some reason it's denied? Is the issue over? Can you come back with a different presentation, or how does it work?
Yeah.
It can always come back. I mean, nothing's ever dead up here. So, I mean, essentially, if the council were to want to reconsider it later, and a new proposal or a new application was made, the council could reconsider, or the authority could reconsider that. If there's any intent on the parties maintaining communication and potentially working something else out, I would recommend a table or a no action. But if it's all or nothing in its current form, then this authority probably needs to approve or deny.
Well, if nobody's going to make a decision, I'll make one.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak if it's all right.
Okay.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to deny Hangar 10 LLC, Aviation LLC, the right to sell fuel at the airport.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion before Miss Cindy?
Mr.
Yes.
Vice Mayor, I've got a question just to clarify. So the application was to provide fuel, retail fuel sales, and those other services. Your motion just stated that it was to deny fuel sales. Was the motion to deny the application in its entirety?
The application was to begin FBO services, which include fuel sales, so.
It was my understanding what was said earlier, they have the authority to do all those other services anyway, minus fuel sales. Is that correct? But I need to make the motion as a denying the application in its entirety.
Yes.
If you deny the application in its entirety, there may be an interpretation of that we're denying all of those requested services. So I would probably.
That's exactly what.
Yeah, I think you're correct. If that's your intent, is just to deny the fuel sales, that your motion covers that.
Thank you.
That's what I second.
Okay.
Was that a second, Mike? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Would the secretary call the,
Okay.
record the vote, please?
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. Motion fails. Motion passes. I done got so confused, I don't know where we are now. Okay, this concludes the, unless there's any new business under the Airport Authority, could I have a motion to adjourn out of the Airport Authority?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Cindy, could you record the vote?
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. It is now 8:12, and
Just one moment, please. Okay.
okay. It is now 8:12, and we will call to order the Durant City Utilities Authority. Would the secretary call the roll, please?
Trustee Morris?
Here.
Trustee Shear?
Here.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Here.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Here.
Chairman Groby?
Here. Under consent items, we just have one item, which I'm assuming we don't need to vote on. Okay. Do we have a motion to vote on the consent item? Number A, consider approval of regular the meeting minutes of the April 9th, 2019 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the consent items, item A.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Would the secretary record the vote?
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
Aye. We have information items. Under administration, we have nothing. Could we call for the adjournment? Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Do we
Second.
have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second for adjournment. Would the secretary please call the,
Trustee Morris?
Aye.
Trustee Shear?
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham?
Aye.
Chairman Groby?
aye. We will now go back out of recess and reconvene back into the city council. Agenda item number 8, executive session. Number A on here, discussion and consideration of entering into executive session. Do I need to read all that? As authorized by Title 25, Section 307B7 of the Oklahoma State Statute to discuss health-related information as it pertains to Chris Rowe's application for a disability pension. B, consider action, and we need to consider executive session for confidential communication with attorney concerning pending claims against the City of Durant, Ballard versus City of Durant, Oklahoma, CV-2018-32, Brittingham versus City of Durant, Oklahoma, CV-2018-34, Sullivan versus City of Durant, Oklahoma, CJ-2018-55, Cash versus City of Oklahoma, CJ 2016 verse -138, tort claim by Dempsey Keach Ballard. This executive session authorized by Title 25, Section 307B4 of the Oklahoma State Statute. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn into executive session?
We need a motion to reconvene the regular meeting first.
I thought I already did that. Did I not do that?
I don't think there was a motion to vote.
She she reconvened, but they didn't have a motion.
Okay, do we need a motion to do that?
Okay.
Yeah. Motion to
Sorry.
reconvene.
I thought I did.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. Could you? Councilmember Morris?
Aye.
Councilmember Shear?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Now we need to consider a motion to convene into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Councilmember Shear.
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. We are now convened, out of session, going into executive session.